Hello students, in this video we'll discuss about syntax, error handling and recovery. So in the last video we have discussed about the role of parser, where the parser is representing both syntax and semantic analysis. So now if an error is occurred at syntax analysis, how we have to handle that error, that we'll discuss. So first, where we are. See, the compiler is divided into 7 phases: lexical analysis, syntax analysis. Like, we are divided into 7 phases, and the main aim of the compiler is source code, converting a source code to machine code. So while converting, if an error is occurred, what will be happened? So whenever an error is occurred at any phase of the compiler, so that error will be thrown to error handler. See, at any phase, lexical analysis, syntax analysis, every phase interacts with the error handler. So whenever an error is occurred, first that error will be thrown to the error handler, and if it is try to handle it, it will try to handle that error with the predefined methods, and and recover the error. If it cannot handle or recover, then that error will be sent to the end user. Means compiler is saying that, or error handler is saying that, so we got an error at some phase and I tried to recover that error with the methods, but I could not able to do it, so you should take care about that, like the error handler work here. So of course, out of these phases, most of the errors are coming from the syntax analysis only, though we can say that this is the most complex phase of the compiler. And coming to this, so what kind of errors generally we'll get from the parser? So first one, or sorry, compiler. See, we'll get the lexical errors. Like, for example, lexical analysis is going to identify the tokens. So the one of the major important token is keyword, and of course even identifier also. See, if you misspell the keyword, then that is going to be identified at the lexical analysis, so the error will be thrown to error handler. Or syntax analysis. For example, if you are giving any statement with unbalanced parenthesis, and that for that we could not able to generate the parse tree. Or if you give like this also, a plus b star c, and the output of lexical analysis is id, id, operator, operator, and id. So for this, even we cannot generate the parse tree from the predefined grammar. In such case also, it will give a syntax error. Or sometimes semantic errors. They are divided into again 2 types: static and dynamic. So static semantic errors means operator is applied to incompatible operands. For example, you take in C language, increment or decrement operators are going to be applicable for only integral data types, like integer or character. But applying the increment or decrement operators to the float data type will give a static semantic error. We'll come to know at the time of compilation. But sometimes there would be some errors which are going to be identified at the time of execution time. For example, if you have given array out of bound index, right, x, so if the value of the x is given by the end user, assume that, so if the value is entered by the end user, then only we'll come to know that whether it is out of bound error or whether it is inside the bound, whether it is error or not. So such we cannot handle it, because they are going to be occurred at the time of execution. And some we may get logical errors. What does it mean by logical error? See, logical error won't stop the flow of the execution, but it will give you the output which we are not expecting, right? So sometimes, like, we are expecting swapping of 2 numbers, and we have written the code, right? And it is no errors, no compile time errors, no runtime errors, but giving a different output comes under logical error. Or if you are calling a function infinite number of times, enter into infinite looping, and that also comes under logical errors. So for example, if you are calling a recursive function without any termination condition, like calling a main inside the main, and if there is no termination condition for the recursive call, then it will enter into the infinite looping. So this comes under the logical errors. And whenever an error is occurred, as I told you, the error will be first thrown to the error handler. So then error handler, what it will do, what are the functions of error handler? So first it will report the errors clearly and accurately. So what kind of errors it is occur, right? And if there is a method to recover that error, and it will try to recover that error so quickly, and of course it will try to detect the subsequent errors, right? And if an error, while it is handling the error, and it will try to slow down the processing of correcting the programs. See, it should not slow down the process while it is rectifying the errors. See, it should not, right? I mean to say that taking some time, more time to handle errors, right? So instead of throwing that error to the end user, it's useless, right? For example, assume that missing a semicolon, taking 10 minutes of time by using handling methods is useless. Instead, you could have just send it to the end user. End user could able to do that, right, recovery within minutes. I mean, say that within a minute. So you are supposed to write such error handling techniques which are not going to slow down the processing of correcting the programs. So now while you are recovering the errors or detecting the errors, we use a property called viable prefix property. So this will help you to detect the errors. And of course, it will, what is the main goal of this means? So detection of errors as soon as possible without further consuming unnecessary input. See, when you know that, assume that, for example, you take a string make, and what are the prefixes of it? Epsilon, m, ma, mak, make. So this is the prefix of this word. Same way, whenever you have written whole statement, then for every prefix it will check the error. Whenever an error is occurred, it will stop it, so that we can reduce the reading of unnecessary input. Then how it is going to be done? Whenever an error is occurred, right, as the prefix of its input does not match with the prefix of any string in the language. For example, you have written here for, right? So you take for, open parenthesis, semicolon, and close parenthesis. But what is the correct statement of for? You should have two semicolons in the for. So then when you are reading it, what is the prefix of it? FOR, it will check out FOR. So we have a valid string. Open parenthesis, we have a valid string. After for, open parenthesis, valid. After for, semicolon, valid. Even though you have not written anything, that won't produce any error. And after semicolon, if you have one more semicolon, valid, no problem, and one more parenthesis, valid. So these all the strings, all the prefixes of this statement are valid. All the prefixes for, right, you can take like this. See, what are the prefixes of it? First for, then for open parenthesis, for open and semicolon, then for open and semicolon, semicolon, for open and semicolon, semicolon, and all these viable prefixes are valid strings. But here, what are the prefixes of it? For, well and good, for open parenthesis, valid, for open parenthesis and semicolon, valid, and whenever it get it, this is not a valid, then it will stop reading the input string, right? Like how it is going to be. Same way here. So do semicolon after that, whenever it is detected, do, because the semicolon must be there at the end of while. So these viable prefixes help to detect the errors, and whenever it detects the error, then it stops the process of reading the input string, and it will go for the error recovery strategies. So when an error is detected, and it will try to recover it. So the error recovery strategies are categorized into four: panic level, praise level, error productions, and global corrections. What does it mean by panic mode? So in the panic mode, actually we are not recovering it. So simply we are just ignoring it, right? Whenever, see in this case, what is the main problem we got here? Missing parenthesis, right? So here we should write the closing parenthesis. So what will be happened here whenever an error is detected? So we have to design the designated token that until which symbol we should ignore it, right? See, whenever you get an error like parenthesis is missing, then every statement in C ends with the semicolon. So it ignores everything until it detects a semicolon. Whenever it detects a semicolon, then automatically it assumes that there is an error and it will try to parse the next input string, so that we are just removing this statement from our compilation, and of course that will be reported to the end user anyway. Then in the phrase level, instead of ignoring the error, so we are going to recover that by using the local corrections. See here the parenthesis is missing. So in the praise level, like see guys, might be, let me take an example for the English statement. See, we have a paragraph where you are asked to identify the errors. Assume that the paragraph is having 10 statements and the English professor is validating your statement. Then assume that there is an error starting from the third statement. So it should not, yes, right, the professor should not report this, that there is an error and he cannot submit that. He has to ignore until the next police stop and he has to start his parsing. That's how the panic mode works. In praise level, what we are doing here, see, by using the local corrections, so as we are missing the parenthesis, I don't know if I change here what will be happen before statement or next function or next function, I don't know. Just I'm going with the local correction and I'm trying to rectify this error by placing the missing parenthesis. Is it going to affect on the other, like for example you are having a variables and you have used some uninitialized variable here and you have thought of initializing the variable within the local, but by declaring this local variable, whether you are changing the meaning of other statements inside the block or before the block, so that we are not worrying in the local, right? So we are just, what we are doing, trying to recover the local error. And in error prediction, see, instead of recovering it, we are sending a proper message to the end user so that it would be very easy to handle with that error in this. So just write the parenthesis is missing for a printf statement, that every open parenthesis, some informative message we are sending to the end user. And the last one, global correction. Of course, we cannot find the difference of local and say the praise level and global here. Simply we are here also replacing the parenthesis, inserting the parenthesis. But as I told you now, assume that we have a program here and somewhere we have declared the variable. So int a equivalent to some value we have sent. We have taken some other, like a equivalent to false, we have taken something, right? So changing this, like a is not initialized and changing here int or something or boolean, so definitely it is going to recover the local error. But by declaring this a as a boolean, and what is the effect of this declaration in other part of our program, we are not worrying about it. Without worrying about that, we have just recovered this error in the praise level. But in the global correction, we should take care about all the other parts of the program. Then only we have to perform the recovery method. So in the next video, we are going to discuss about types of parsers, especially the introduction to top-down parsing.